here's our first question, and then we're going to go over it in great detail. Here it is. Doc, why do you say that if someone eats rice, they are not gluten-free? Man, I get this all the time. Because once again, gluten is a very general term. And if you go to even like, we can put up rice, we can put up other grains, which I'm going to show you in a second. And what happens is by them putting gluten-free, it's like when the FDA allowed food labeling for trans fats to be on the front of the box. It says trans fat free, and then you look, they allow a certain amount of milligrams in the back, and you're going, well, that's a lie. Well, this is kind of one of those perpetual word salads that's kind of a lie. If you look at this, when you look at gluten, it's a general term for a protein. Now, because gluten was probably most researched by far when it came to celiac. Celiac is a very devastating autoimmune disorder for the GI to the point where it can end up in having major surgeries, there can be major infections. There's a lot of devastation to people that have celiac, so I'm very empathetic. But then people say, Doc, I have celiac, I stay away from gluten, and guess what happens? I'm still reacting to foods. And it confuses a lot of doctors because they look and say, they're eating no wheat. There is no doubt. But if you can take a look at the graph here, type of grains, and once again, if you want to look at it this way, the wheat gluten, it's called a prolamine. It's called gliadin. So therefore, it's the largest protein gluten in all of the grains. You can see about 69% of the total protein comes from that gluten. So come back here a second, we'll go back to the chart. And do me a favor, when you get this and you come back there, take a screenshot of it so you have this for your notes. But it'll also be in the notes on the recap on ADP too, and the slides will be there so you want to use that slide later. But you should understand this, that's why a lot of people don't realize, that all grains, including rice, have a gluten in it. It just has a different name and can even have a different physiological reaction in the body. Some people do not react to a rice gluten, but they'll react to a wheat gluten. Some people react to a rye gluten, but they won't react to a rice gluten. But to say that corn, to say that millet, to say that barley, all these things are gluten-free, no, as you can see, and let's go back to the chart now, Tom. As you can see, no, they are gliuten-free. But if you look at corn and Zion, guess what happens? That is the gluten that's in there, the prolamine. And if you look at the whole chart of prolamine, each one of these are a, quote, gluten. So therefore, the FDA said, well, the major aspect is celiac and things that react. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, if it's not a wheat, if it's not gliadin in there, we will allow you to say gluten-free. So are oats gluten-free? No. But if you look at the chart, which is the lowest gluten-based grain, obviously is rice. That's why a lot of people that are gluten-free, quote, don't react to rice, or you can also look at this way, look at down there, teff, or you can see like oats. So therefore, people say gluten-free oats, not true. If you look at wheat, rye, oats, barley, millet, corn, rice, sorghum, teff, none of them, by definition, are gluten-free. Not one of them. The only way that you are gluten-free is if you avoid all those grains. So therefore, oh, I'm gluten-free, well, oats. But then I did have a lot of celiac people that came in for care, and we still have a lot of celiac people coming in for care for all of our doctors, and they are still reacting, and they're confused why. And there's a lot of great research that talks about reacting to, and they say non-gluten, I wish they wouldn't say that. I would say non-gluten-based proteins, or what prolamine are you reacting to? And it could be, even though rice has only a 5% of the, quote, prolamine of the gluten that's in there, of the total protein, but that's still gluten by classification. So therefore, if a person eats rice, Doc, I'm gluten-free. No, you're gliadin-free. Doc, eat oats, I'm gluten-free. No, you're not, you're gliadin-free. So Dr. Flynn, Patrick Michael Flynn, are you gluten-free? Absolutely not. Will I ever be gluten-free? Never, ever. I just won't. I'm gonna eat rice. I'm going to have good steel-cut oats. I'm gonna have things like good organic non-GMO corn and stuff like that. I don't react to those things. I do extremely well with those things. So therefore, I personally, my wife, my kids, basically everybody that knows me, will probably never be gluten-free because we will have some grain that has some prolamine, aka some gluten, some protein in there that would be technically a gluten. So therefore, the concept of gluten-free or a gluten-free restaurant, I'm sitting there going, no, gliadin-free. So I just want people to understand that because that's where the confusion comes in. Now, can you be grain-free? Sure you can, because you just don't eat grains. That's the only way you can truly be gluten-free. So if somebody says, hey, I'm gluten-free, I'm like, do you have any kind of grain, especially the top 8? They're like, yes, then you're not gluten-free. You're gluten-free. And that's okay, and I'm not saying that everybody reacts to all the glutens. There's people, even though just like dairy, about 1/3 of the population reacts to dairy. I'm not one of those instead of that. And there's a portion of people that react to the gluten, but not does everybody? No. In general, are people have a little safer reactions if they just don't eat grains? Sure, that's why a lot of people do go grain-free and see positive benefit that way. But just remember, if you eat any kind of grain, just tell people that you are gluten-free, which no one will understand because they'll be like, what's gluten? And see, that's the confusion that does come in. So I personally will never be gluten-free, nor will my wife, nor will my kids, nor probably anybody in this room, because we'll have the least reactive prolamine. But people can react to them. And I've had patients saying, listen, you got to go grain-free, and then you truly be gluten-free. So just trying to change that confusion of what people do when I talk about they're not really gluten-free. All right.